VO2 max is the maximum amount of oxygen your body can use during exercise, and it's measured in milliliters per kilogram per minute. Having a higher VO2 max number gives you the potential to run for faster and longer with less effort, but potential is the key word, and in this video we're going to explore why that is, and by the end of the video you'll understand and be able to incorporate VO2 max into your training effectively so that you get the most out of your training. VO2 max is the aerobic potential, and like I said, it doesn't paint the full picture because a lot of other factors come into play, namely running economy and lactate threshold. Running economy is how well you're able to utilize the potential of VO2 max. So you could have a high VO2 max, but if you have a low running economy, which is your running efficiency, how much oxygen it requires for you to run a certain pace, you're not going to be efficient and actually harness that full potential that your VO2 max number is giving you. So your VO2 max number is not the be all end all. There are other factors that come into play, but it's also nice to have a high potential because there's way more room for improvement if you do work on your running economy and lactate threshold. So running economy is talking about, are you using that fuel efficiently? Or are we burning through it and not actually running that quick with a lot of fuel? We want to use the fuel conservatively, and the way to do that is by running efficiently. And a lot of that is tied to form, your running form. And even within running form, we need to look at certain factors like, yes, how efficient you actually are, but also at the tendon level, are your tendons springy enough, giving you that plyometric capability and power to kind of push you forward? So like I always say, running is very complicated and there are a lot of factors that come into play. Everyone talks about the car analogy with VO2 max, where VO2 max represents the engine of the car, but I'll give you another example that I saw of an analogy for VO2 max. Let's use basketball as an example. Assuming all other factors are the same and the only difference is the height between players, the tallest person would statistically perform the best because they're the tallest. So this is imagining that everyone is really crap at shooting baskets. Obviously if you're taller, you're closer to the rim, a bit more of a higher chance to win. But luckily in basketball and running as well, there's many other factors, so being the tallest isn't all of it. There's other factors that we need to consider. So think of it this way, two people with the same VO2 max will not necessarily perform at the same level. The one with the higher velocity at VO2 max will perform better. VO2 max is important because it allows you to sustain a faster pace for a longer amount of time, and it doesn't even just apply to these faster paces. When you think about a marathon, we're not running at VO2 max pace. We're probably going to be running anywhere between 60, 65 to 80 to 85% of VO2 max. But the higher VO2 max is, the faster you can go at these sub-maximal efforts. Even if you're at 60% or 80% VO2 max, those are going to be quicker. Most runners can hold VO2 max for 3 to 8 minutes. If you're a beginner, you're probably going to be closer to 3 minutes. If you're an elite runner, you'll be closer to 8 minutes. And how long we can hold VO2 max for will depend on factors like how much lactate can your body handle and how much mental grit do you have to push through that lactic feeling in your legs. Remember, VO2 is in relation to oxygen, not lactate. There's a distinction between LT2 and VO2. VO2 is faster as well because your legs are jelly. You can't hold it for that long. You're going very quick. You're using as much oxygen as you possibly can. It's definitely faster than lactate threshold. In regards to training and adaptations for lactate threshold and VO2 max, there are things to consider, which I find interesting as well, and hopefully you do too. The first interesting thing is with lactate threshold training, the goal is actually to not cross threshold. Like we want to stay within threshold, as in under LT2, to get the benefits of threshold, because we're trying to keep the blood lactate low and not spike up. But on the other hand, with VO2 max, we're trying to push the aerobic system to its limits. We're really working hard, and therefore there's a lot of ways in which we can do that. You can actually train at 90% of VO2 max, you can train at 100% of VO2 max, and you can train at above VO2 max, 110%, 120%, that sort of thing. But what intensity of VO2 max you use kind of depends on what workout you're doing and also what kind of stimulus you're trying to get as well. If the interval length is like 3 to 6 minutes, for example, we can do it at 90% of VO2 max because it is a long rep compared to some of the other VO2 max workouts I'll talk about in a second. And because you're at 90% of VO2 max, not 100%, there's a bit more aerobic contribution than running at 100% of VO2 max, even though 100% of VO2 max still has a significant aerobic system contribution as well. If you don't understand what I mean by aerobic energy system or energy systems in general, watch my threshold video because I talked about it and broke it down on that video. So when we're doing workouts at 100% VO2 max, we're at the sweet spot in terms of oxygen utilization. We're stressing the aerobic system at a perfect amount that we're working at VO2 max exactly. And when we look at 110%, 120% of VO2 max, we're looking at a bigger anaerobic energy contribution. Again, there's still a lot of aerobic contribution involved. All the systems are working in unison, but as we get into higher intensities, there's more of a contribution from the anaerobic energy system, which doesn't last long term. So as we get quicker, we can't hold it for as long. There's more anaerobic contribution, but there's still a lot of aerobic contribution at VO2 max. Now, this sort of intensity is going to help develop our VO2 max and also be able to handle and clear lactate, because we will be running on heavy legs, lactic legs. So working at 110% of VO2 max and 90% of VO2 max is quite different, but they're both worth doing. When we are running 110%, 120% of VO2 max, obviously the reps will be a bit shorter in the workouts that you do. I'm going to give you a sample workout, which is like 30 seconds on, 30 seconds off. And the offs could be walk, it could be a very, very slow jog because we're running at a very high intensity, or it could just be standing rest. But 30 seconds on, 30 seconds off is a great VO2 max workout, which I touched on in a previous video. And the reason for that is quite interesting, but we'll get to that in a second. And a lot of people might think that 30 seconds on, 30 seconds off at 120% of VO2 max sounds really intense and anaerobic. But in reality, because we're only doing it for 30 seconds, we're not accumulating too much fatigue. Well, we are, but not like absolutely dying because we're only doing it for 30 seconds at just above VO2 max. So yeah, it sounds anaerobic, but it's still pretty aerobic. But I guess the first few workouts are going to put you to a little bit of an oxygen deficit because your VO2 isn't going to kick in. VO2 meaning the amount of oxygen consumed. But once you get a few reps into your 30 seconds on, 30 seconds off, it forces your oxygen consumption to go up a little bit, or a lot actually. And remember, I did talk about this in previous videos, but when we are running, like you're going to first hit LT2 and then you're going to hit VT2, and then you're gonna hit VO2 max. But VT2 and VO2 max are pretty close together. But yeah, VT2 is like quite a significant amount after LT2. I already talked about why. Like, think about sprinting 400 meters all out. You're not gonna be breathing hard 50 meters in. You're gonna be breathing hard probably after the race. So yeah, obviously you cross LT2 in that 400 meter all out sprint, but you're not breathing hard until you finish that 400 meter all out. Which is why I'm saying it will take a bit for your oxygen consumption to go up, because you're gonna try and rely on being able to sustain that effort with a lower oxygen consumption until your body realizes, oh crap, we actually need to work at a higher oxygen consumption to be able to keep up this intensity, because we are running at 120% of VO2 max. Like, that's very quick. And your body doesn't have the time to just increase your oxygen consumption during the 30-second rep and then go down during the 30-second rest. So it kind of forces itself to stay elevated for a long period of time, even while you're resting for 30 seconds. And the benefit of this workout is that because half of the time you're at rest and you're still at a high VO2, remember I talked about how you can hold VO2 max for 3 to 8 minutes. If you're doing this workout, you might be able to run and do this workout for like even up to 24 minutes sometimes. And that's way more than how long you can hold your VO2 max for. But we're keeping our oxygen consumption at a very high level. So we're getting huge oxygen consumption benefits, and that's going to develop our VO2 max. But I don't want people to think that that's the only workout you can possibly do. There's plenty of different workouts out there. You can search them online. I'm pretty sure there should be Reddit threads and stuff talking about good VO2 max workouts to do, because you can run 90% of VO2 max and get different benefits. Like I said, more of an aerobic contribution if you're running 90% of VO2 max. If you're running 120% of VO2 max, more of an anaerobic contribution. Your legs are gonna have to power through lactate, or the lactate feeling in your legs. So you get different benefits from working in different sorts of intensities, which you can't really do with lactate threshold, because we can't just go above LT2 too often, because we're not getting the benefit of threshold training if we're always or frequently running above LT2. Like, that's probably the gray zone, honestly. If you're going above LT2, you may as well go to VO2 max training and not like sit in an awkward place between LT2 and VO2 max. So having a clear distinction, today I'm doing threshold, another day I'm doing VO2 max, is actually a good thing in my opinion, because it avoids that little gray zone that we kind of want to avoid. But who knows, I think other people might have different opinions on this, but that's just my opinion. My dog came to distract me a bit. Hello. Now, the adaptation between VO2 max and lactate threshold is actually super interesting, because I've been talking about this for a long time. I always say you gain speed very quickly and you lose it very quickly, and you gain aerobic fitness in a longer amount of time, and it takes a bit longer to lose that aerobic fitness as well. So when you get injured, you're probably going to lose your speed before you lose your aerobic fitness. Been saying this for years on the channel. What I mean by speed is actually VO2 max. Because with VO2 max, if you do train consistently for 6 to 8 weeks, get the good workouts in, you will improve pretty rapidly, but then it'll start to plateau. Whereas with lactate threshold, the progress is a bit more linear and you slowly increase over time. And even if you're elite, you can kind of carry on improving your threshold quite a lot before you actually plateau. But VO2 max, it's more of a distinct, get the gains pretty quickly, plateau a little. Even if you lose that VO2 max fitness, the next time you're trying to get back to where you were, you're gonna get it back a bit quicker. So then you can even increase it even more. So you don't have to worry about being VO2 max fit the whole year, because again, that might risk injury, but instead you can get that fitness back quite quickly anyway, quicker than before. So if it took you 6 to 12 weeks before, it might even only take 4 to 8 weeks the next time. But because of that concept as well, some people, it may be worth doing a VO2 max little training block earlier in the season so that we can build that VO2 max, so that when we come to peaking season, when we want to get really fit, we can introduce the VO2 max training again, but we'll get back to where we were quicker and probably get even quicker than before. So in between, you can do all that base work and tempo and threshold and all that, but it does depend on the athlete. Obviously, not everyone's gonna do VO2 max really early in the season. Most people will just do base training, and that's probably safer as well anyway. But I'm just saying, it opens a whole world of different training styles and stuff. And that's why there's plenty of different coaches that have different coaching styles. Not everyone's getting coached the same way. Not every athlete is the same. So you gotta have a good coach-athlete relationship. Try and work out what is the best fit for you. And that's why, again, running is so fun. There's so many parameters that we need to look at. It's not as simple as everyone follow this training program and you're gonna get fit. If anything, everyone following one program is super dangerous because it doesn't take into account all the other factors that are important to look at. But because of this, threshold is quite important even during base training, because again, progress is quite linear. We can get a lot from being consistent over a long period of time. It's not one of those things where you get fit quickly and then you lose the fitness and then you get fit again, lose fitness. You kind of want to just maintain a gradual increase over a long period of time. Now I'm going to talk about the relationship between lactate threshold and VO2 max, and the relationship between running economy and VO2 max. We'll start with lactate threshold. So with lactate threshold, if we have two different athletes, and we'll stick to these two athletes the whole time for the examples, Bob and Steve. They both have a VO2 max number of 60 milliliters per kilogram per minute. But let's say for a random given race, let's say a half marathon, Bob can hold 85% of VO2 max for the entire run. And then Steve can only hold 75% of VO2 max for the whole run. So Bob can obviously maintain a faster pace for longer without fatiguing. Therefore, he has the advantage in this half marathon race. Depending on your running ability, your LT2 will be closer to VO2 max, or if you're near your LT2 will probably be way further away from VO2 max. So Bob has that LT2 closer to VO2 max, so therefore he can run faster for longer. So with these two people with the same VO2 max number, Bob is still better because of his better ability to clear lactate and carry on running faster for longer. Had to quickly do something, but we're back. All right, let's go back to the same two people, Bob and Steve. They both have a VO2 max of 60 milliliters per kilogram per minute, and they are both running 320 per kilometer at a given time. Now at 320 per kilometer, Bob is at a VO2 of 50 milliliters per kilogram per minute, whereas Steve is at 55. So what we can see here is that Bob is running at a lower oxygen consumption compared to Steve, who's running with a little bit higher of an oxygen consumption at 320 per kilometer. So same pace, same VO2 max, but Bob is more efficient at using that oxygen. This means that he has a better running economy. It doesn't take as much oxygen consumption to be able to maintain the same pace compared to Steve. So basically Bob is going to be more fresh later on into the race because he has been more efficient at using the oxygen that's available. Running would be so boring if VO2 max was the only indicator that looks at who performs the best, and luckily we have lactate threshold, running economy as well. There's also all the other small things that we need to consider: strength, muscle endurance, mental toughness, race strategy as well. Like technically the fittest person with the highest VO2 max with the highest lactate threshold doesn't always win, especially when you look at more tactical races like the 1500 5K. You could get other people winning if they're smart, if their race IQ is really good and they can be in the right place at the right time, and therefore they'll feel more fresher even compared to like a fitter athlete. And then there's other stuff like heat tolerance. So especially when you do like a trail race, you might not even see the fittest person win, and you might just see the person that can handle the hills the best because of their strength training and whatever. Obviously everything comes hand in hand, like it's all an amalgamation, and that will kind of contribute to performance to an extent. But yeah, this is actually why it's quite good to think of running holistically and try and work on everything. And that's why a lot of people say variety is key. Variety is important because there's so many factors and we're trying to work on everything. and therefore be the best athlete possible. Think about Bond Night in Manly, for example. Like I said in several other videos, to win Bond Night in Manly 80k, there's trail and road. You have to be good at hills, you have to be good at downhill running, you have to have a good threshold, you have to have a good VO2 max, you have to have a good 5k, 10k, half marathon, full marathon. You have to be mentally strong, you have to be able to pace well, you have to be able to do nutrition properly, you have to be able to stand for a long period of time. All these factors are stuff that you need to be good at, and the person with the best combination of everything is probably going to win the race. And that is exactly why I love Bond Night Manly. Like, you can't just be a good trail runner, you have to be a good road runner as well to be able to be good. But then all the other factors that I mentioned as well, super important. So to cap off this video, we're going to quickly talk about the difference between absolute VO2 max and relative VO2 max. Now, absolute VO2 max is used more commonly in sports where weight doesn't play a factor in the performance. So we're talking about stuff where there's like a mechanical aspect involved as well, or if there's like a body of water around you. So we're talking swimming, rowing, cycling on flats. But when you're cycling uphill, obviously there's that weight component to it, where you have to push through weight. So relative VO2 max kind of gets rid of that bias for weight. So they can compare a slightly bigger person to a slightly smaller person because we're looking at it per kilogram rather than per the whole body. But this is exactly why a small person isn't going to be super good at rowing. But when we look at our oxygen consumption per kilogram, so we're only taking a kilogram of our body and seeing how much oxygen that kilogram can use, obviously that's more of a key indicator compared to how much overall you're producing when it is weight bearing like running. Long story short, the VO2 max number that you see on your watch or whatever, I don't have it on mine for some reason. I never look at it anyway, but the VO2 max number that you see everywhere is referring to relative VO2 max, which is again in milliliters per kilogram per minute, whereas absolute VO2 max is in liters per minute. So overall, how much is that entire human consuming oxygen wise versus relative VO2 max, how much is 1 kilogram of that human using per minute. Thanks for watching the video, guys, really appreciate it. As always, there's a link to my buy me a coffee in the description. If this video was of any value and you want to support the channel, please donate me a coffee. It's just $5 and it goes a long way. But other than that, like the video, comment below what you want to see next and what you thought of the video, and if you have any other questions, and I'll see you in the next video.